What if I told you that in 1967, a single mechanic built 3 Chevrolet Camaros that broke over 300 speed records in just 12 days? What if those same cars humiliated Ford's best Trans Am team at their own practice session? Meet Henry "SMOKEY" Yunicke, the man who turned rule bending into an art form and the Camaro into his masterpiece. This is the story of automotive deception at its finest and how one man's dream changed racing forever. Henry "SMOKEY" Yunicke operated out of a garage in Daytona Beach with a hand-painted sign that read, "Best damn garage in town." The claim wasn't boastful, it was factual. By 1967, SMOKEY had already earned his reputation as NASCAR's most brilliant rule interpreter, a man who could find loopholes in regulations that sanctioning bodies didn't even know existed. Born in Pennsylvania in 1923, SMOKEY served as a B-17 flight engineer during World War II, where he learned that survival often depended on creative problem-solving under pressure. This wartime experience shaped his approach to racing: study every system, understand every rule, and always have a backup plan. When he returned from the war, he brought military precision to stock car racing, treating rule books like battle plans to be dissected and exploited. SMOKEY's philosophy was elegantly simple. Show me the rule that says I can't do it. This wasn't cheating in his mind, it was superior preparation. While other mechanics focused on making cars faster, SMOKEY focused on making them legal while being faster. The distinction mattered enormously in the heavily regulated world of 1960s motorsports. His garage became legendary for innovations that pushed the boundaries of legality. SMOKEY once built a Chevelle so aerodynamically perfect that NASCAR officials spent hours trying to figure out what was wrong with it. When they finally gave up, SMOKEY drove it away and later admitted he'd moved the entire body 2 inches to the left for better weight distribution. The rulebook never said the body had to be centered on the chassis. By the mid-60s, the automotive world was experiencing a revolution. Ford had launched the Mustang in 1964, creating the pony car segment overnight. General Motors responded with the Camaro in 1967, and suddenly every manufacturer needed a sporty, affordable car that could win races on Sunday and sell cars on Monday. The Trans Am series, launched in 1966, became the perfect showcase for this new breed of performance car. SMOKEY watched the early Trans Am seasons with the analytical eye of a military strategist. Ford dominated with their Mustangs, winning the 1966 and 1967 manufacturer championships, while Chevrolet struggled with the underpowered Corvair. When Chevrolet finally introduced the Camaro with its potent small-block V8 options, SMOKEY saw an opportunity that others missed. The timing was perfect. Chevrolet had created a car with excellent aerodynamics, multiple engine options, and most importantly for SMOKEY's purposes, a parts catalog full of optional equipment that could be legally installed on any production car. These weren't aftermarket modifications. They were genuine Chevrolet components that any dealer could order and install. SMOKEY's genius lay in understanding that racing success wasn't just about building the fastest car. It was about building the fastest legal car, and the definition of legal depended entirely on how carefully you read the rulebooks. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, or FIA, and the United States Auto Club, USAC, maintained extensive lists of production car records, but most manufacturers never bothered pursuing them systematically. Looking through the record books, SMOKEY identified over 300 existing records that he believed could be broken with a properly prepared Camaro. The records were divided into displacement classes: the B production class for engines between 305 and 488 cubic inches, and the C production class for engines between 183 and 305 cubic inches. This gave him the flexibility to attack records with both small block and big block power plants. More importantly, SMOKEY realized that breaking these records would accomplish multiple goals simultaneously. First, it would generate massive publicity for Chevrolet's new Camaro. Second, it would demonstrate the car's performance potential to Trans Am competitors. Third, and perhaps most satisfying for SMOKEY, it would prove that a small garage in Daytona Beach could out-engineer the massive research and development departments of Ford and Chrysler. The plan began taking shape in early 1967. SMOKEY would build 3 identical Camaros, each optimized for different types of record attempts. They would appear completely stock to casual observers, but every component would be carefully selected and modified within the legal boundaries of production car regulations. But creating the perfect sleeper required more than just SMOKEY's legendary rule-reading skills. It demanded engineering modifications so subtle that they remained hidden from inspectors for over 50 years. The 3 Camaros that emerged from SMOKEY's garage in 1967 looked absolutely ordinary. They wore standard Z28 Z28 markings, rode on stock-appearing suspension, and showed no obvious signs of modification. Yet beneath their factory-correct exteriors lay some of the most sophisticated automotive deception ever attempted. Smokey started with what he claimed were genuine Z28 Camaros, though automotive historians have long suspected they began life as base model cars that received 28 components and badging. The distinction mattered for record-keeping purposes, but not for the regulations Smokey intended to exploit. What mattered was that every component he planned to use was listed in Chevrolet's official parts catalog as optional equipment. The heart of each car was its engine, and here Smokey demonstrated his masterful understanding of Chevrolet's internal parts system. For the small block applications, he built a 302 cubic inch engine that produced 445 horsepower, nearly double the output of a standard Z28. The key was using what Smokey carefully described as optional heavy-duty parts. These weren't aftermarket components. Chevrolet manufactured high-performance versions of virtually every engine component for their racing programs and industrial applications. Smokey simply ordered the strongest available pistons, the most aggressive camshaft profiles, the largest valves, and the most efficient cylinder heads. When assembled together, these optional parts created an engine that was technically still a production in Chevrolet 302, but one that produced power levels typically associated with much larger engines. The big block version was even more impressive. Using a 396 cubic inch displacement, Smokey's engine produced 540 horsepower through similar careful selection of optional components. Both engines used solid lifters instead of hydraulic lifters, another option that allowed higher RPM operation and more aggressive cam timing. The transmissions were genuine Muncie 4-speeds, but Smokey specified the close ratio M22 Rock Crusher version, typically reserved for Corvettes and high-performance applications. The rear axles were legitimate 12-bolt positraction units, but with gear ratios optimized for high-speed running rather than acceleration. The real genius, however, lay in the bodywork modifications that remained invisible to casual inspection. According to current owner Vic Edelbrock, who discovered the full extent of Smokey's work during a complete restoration, virtually every panel had been subtly altered for aerodynamic efficiency. The entire body had been acid-dipped to remove weight while maintaining structural integrity. This process, commonly used in aircraft manufacturing, could reduce body weight by 40 to 50 pounds without affecting crash safety or visual appearance. The savings came from removing paint, undercoating, and sound-deadening materials that served no structural purpose. More dramatically, the front suspension mounting points had been relocated, and the subframe had been Z-cut and rewelded to allow the floor pan to sit lower in the chassis. This modification lowered the car's center of gravity and reduced frontal area, both critical for high-speed stability and reduced drag. The changes were so skillfully executed that they remained undetected until the car was completely disassembled decades later. The hood and front fenders had been reshaped to improve airflow over the car's nose. The modifications were subtle, a 1/4 inch here, a 1/2 inch there, combined to reduce drag significantly. The windshield had been laid back at a slightly different angle, and the drip rails had been pulled flush with the body to eliminate the small air pockets that could create turbulence at high speeds. Perhaps most impressively, every surface under the car had been smoothed and reshaped. The exhaust system had been routed to minimize turbulence under the car. The fuel tank had been smoothed and repositioned. Even the spare tire well had been modified to reduce air turbulence. These changes were completely invisible from outside the car, but could be worth several miles per hour at Bonneville speeds. The suspension components appeared completely stock, but Smokey had carefully selected the stiffest available springs and shock absorbers from Chevrolet's heavy-duty option list. The cars rode slightly lower than standard, but within the acceptable range for factory variations. The wheels were magnesium American racing pieces, significantly lighter than steel wheels, but still DOT approved for street use. The tires were 10.0015 rayon racing compounds, the widest and stickiest rubber available, while still maintaining the proper 15-inch diameter specified in the regulations. Most remarkably, Smokey accomplished all of this while maintaining the car's ability to pass a casual technical inspection. The VIN numbers were correct, the engine displacements were legal, and every major component could be traced to legitimate Chevrolet part numbers. On paper, these were simply well-optioned Z28 Camaros with roll bars added for safety. The total cost of building each car exceeded $15,000. roughly equivalent to $130,000 today. This represented more than double the price of a loaded Camaro SS. But Smokey viewed it as a necessary investment in proving his engineering theories. Besides, he was confident that the publicity value would far exceed the construction costs. With his mechanical masterpieces complete, Smokey was ready to test their capabilities against the competition. But first, he had a score to settle with Ford's Trans Am program, and he knew exactly where to find them. October 1967 found Smokey Yunick flat towing one of his Camaros across the country toward Bonneville Salt Flats, but he had planned a detour that would become one of racing's most audacious publicity stunts. Riverside International Raceway was hosting practice sessions for the upcoming Mission Bell 250, and the Bud Moore Mercury Cougar team was using the track to prepare for what they hoped would be another Trans Am victory. Bud Moore's operation represented everything corporate about 1960s racing. Backed by Ford Motor Company's unlimited resources, the team fielded professionally prepared Mercury Cougars, driven by top-tier talent, including Dan Gurney and Jerry Titus. They had dominated the 1967 Trans Am season, winning both the Drivers' and Manufacturers' Championships, while Chevrolet's efforts struggled with outdated Corvair technology. Smokey's arrival at Riverside was anything but subtle. He pulled into the paddock area towing his Camaro on an open trailer, generating immediate curiosity from the Ford team and track officials. Somehow, and Smokey never fully explained how, he convinced track management to allow him to unload the car and run a few shakedown laps before continuing to Bonneville. The Mercury team watched with professional interest as Lloyd Ruby, a veteran Indianapolis 500 competitor, climbed into the plain-looking Camaro. Ruby was no stranger to high-speed driving, having finished second at Indianapolis earlier that year, but even he wasn't prepared for what the car could do. On his first flying lap, Ruby turned a time that was respectable but not threatening to the Ford times. The Mercury crew relaxed, assuming they were watching another underfunded privateer attempt at Trans Am competition. Then Ruby radioed that he was just getting familiar with the car and asked for more laps. The second lap was noticeably quicker. The third lap was quicker still. By the fourth lap, Ruby was matching the best times the Mercury drivers had posted during their extensive practice sessions. The Ford crew stopped their work to watch more carefully. On his fifth lap, Ruby shattered the existing Trans Am qualifying record at Riverside. The time, 1:56.8, was 0.6 of a second faster than Jerry Titus had managed in the works Mercury Cougar after 3 days of intensive practice and setup work. More embarrassingly for Ford, it was nearly a full second faster than any Chevrolet had ever posted at Riverside in Trans Am competition. The Bud Moore team immediately protested to track officials, demanding a technical inspection of the Camaro. They were certain that such performance required illegal modifications, and they wanted the car examined before Smokey could remove evidence of cheating. Track officials, however, had no authority to conduct technical inspections for cars that weren't entered in their race. Smokey's Camaro wasn't competing in the Mission Bell 250, so it wasn't subject to Trans Am regulations. As far as the track was concerned, Ruby had simply set a fast lap time during an open practice session. The situation grew more heated when Smokey offered to let Ford's crew examine the car themselves. He popped the hood, showing off the 302 cubic inch small block that appeared completely stock except for its impressive cleanliness and the addition of safety equipment. The engine bay looked so normal that several Ford mechanics assumed the performance came from some hidden source they couldn't identify. Bud Moore himself demanded that track officials prevent Smokey from leaving until the car could be properly inspected, but again, they had no legal authority to detain a vehicle that wasn't entered in their event. Smokey was technically just a visitor using the track during an open practice session. The psychological impact on the Ford team was immediate and severe. They had spent enormous sums developing their Trans Am program, employing teams of engineers and conducting extensive wind tunnel testing. Their Mercury Cougars represented the latest in aerodynamic technology and engine development. Yet here was a lone mechanic from Daytona Beach with a single car that could embarrass their entire effort. More troubling for Ford was the realization that if Smokey could build one car this fast, he could probably build others. The Trans Am series required manufacturers to build a minimum number of street cars to qualify for racing, but there was nothing preventing someone from building small numbers of highly optimized versions for specialized competition. Smokey loaded the Camaro back onto his trailer and departed Riverside with what witnesses described as a big smile on his face. He had accomplished exactly what he intended, proving that his engineering approach could compete with and defeat the best corporate efforts in American racing community. Ford executives demanded explanations from their racing division about how a privateer could outperform their factory effort. Chevrolet management, meanwhile, began receiving inquiries about whether Smokey's car represented their future Trans Am direction. For Smokey, the Riverside demonstration served multiple purposes. It proved his cars were genuinely fast, not just optimized for Bonneville's unique conditions. It generated publicity that money couldn't buy. Most importantly, it established psychological dominance over the competition before the real record attempts began. The incident also revealed Smokey's strategic thinking. He could have driven directly to Bonneville and attempted his records in relative obscurity. Instead, he chose to make a public statement about Chevrolet's potential performance, knowing that the story would reach automotive journalists and industry executives, regardless of his Bonneville results. With Ford's best efforts thoroughly humiliated and the racing world watching, Smokey headed to Utah where the real test awaited. 12 days on the Salt Flats that would rewrite the record books forever. The Bonneville Salt Flats in October 1967 provided perfect conditions for SMOKEY YUNICK's assault on the record books. The 30,000-acre expanse of hard-packed salt offered unlimited straight-line distance, while the cool autumn air provided optimal density for maximum engine power. Smokey had spent months studying weather patterns and historical data to identify this window as ideal for his attempt. His team assembled at the makeshift pit area with military precision. Smokey had marked off a 10-mile course on the salt, far longer than the standard measured mile used for most speed records. This extended distance would allow his drivers to reach true terminal velocity and provide multiple opportunities for timing equipment to capture their speeds. The driver lineup read like a who's who of American motorsports. Mickey Thompson, already a legend in land speed racing with multiple records to his name, would handle the most technical high-speed runs. Curtis Turner, the hard-charging NASCAR star known for his fearless driving style, would tackle the longer distance records. Bunky Blackburn and Johnny Patterson, both experienced stock car drivers, would share duties on the various displacement classes and endurance runs. The systematic nature of Smokey's approach became apparent immediately. Rather than attempting random records, he had studied the FIA and USAC record books to identify exactly which marks were most vulnerable. Many existing records dated back years or even decades, set by cars with significantly less power or aerodynamic efficiency than his modified Camaros. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile maintained separate record categories for different engine displacements, measured distances, and starting conditions. Records existed for flying mile speeds, standing start acceleration, and sustained speeds over various distances from 1 kilometer to 3,000 kilometers. Each category offered multiple opportunities for record attempts. Day 1 focused on establishing baseline performance with a 302 cubic inch small block engine. Mickey Thompson made the first official run, accelerating through the measured mile at 174.9 miles per hour, immediately breaking the existing C-Class production record by over 15 miles per hour. The timing equipment registered clean passes in both directions, meeting the FIA requirement for official records. The 396 cubic inch big block proved even more impressive. Turner's first flying mile pass registered 183.7 miles per hour, shattering the existing B-Class production record. More importantly, this speed was achieved with what appeared to be a completely stock automobile, running on pumped gasoline and equipped with full interior trim. Smokey's strategy became clear as the days progressed. Rather than simply breaking each record once, he would systematically improve upon his own marks, pushing each car to its absolute limit while conditions remained favorable. This approach served two purposes. It maximized publicity value by generating multiple news stories, and it protected against other competitors attempting to reclaim the records with minimal improvements. The variety of records attempted was staggering. Flying mile speeds were just the beginning. The team attacked standing start acceleration records from kilometer distances up to 50 kilometers. They set new marks for sustained average speeds over distances ranging from 100 miles to 2,000 miles. Each successful run required precise timing equipment and official observers to verify the results. International records proved particularly satisfying for Smokey because they carried FIA recognition worldwide. Many of these marks had been held by European manufacturers, making American victories especially meaningful during an era of intense international competition in motorsports. The physical demands on both cars and drivers were enormous. Sustained high-speed running in the desert environment subjected every component to extreme stress, Temperatures under the hood exceeded 200 degrees Fahrenheit, while tire temperatures approached their failure limits. The thin air at Bonneville's 4,200-foot elevation reduced engine power by approximately 15% compared to sea-level performance. Smokey's careful preparation showed in the car's reliability. While other Bonneville competitors frequently experienced engine failures or tire problems, his Camaros completed run after run without major mechanical issues. The optional heavy-duty parts he had specified proved their worth under conditions far more severe than normal street use. By the end of 12 days, the team had officially broken over 300 different speed records. Some individual records were broken multiple times as conditions improved or the cars were further optimized. Smokey later claimed they had set over 500 records when counting multiple runs in the same categories. The fastest official speed recorded was 183.7 miles per hour with the big block Camaro, but unofficial runs may have exceeded 185 miles per hour under ideal conditions. These speeds were remarkable for production-based automobiles in 1967, competitive with purpose-built racing machines costing many times more to construct. For the record books, Smokey's Bonneville campaign represented the most comprehensive assault on production car speed records in history. Never before had a single team attempted to break so many different records in such a short time period. The systematic nature of the effort, combined with its remarkable success rate, established new standards for land speed record attempts. But Smokey's Bonneville triumph was just the beginning of a saga that would span decades, involving mysterious disqualifications, legendary racers, and revelations that wouldn't surface for 50 years. The euphoria of Bonneville's success lasted exactly 4 months. In February 1968, one of Smokey's Camaros arrived at Daytona International Speedway for the 24-hour endurance race, carrying the mysterious number 13 and scheduled to be driven by Bruce McLaren, the New Zealand racing legend, who would later found the McLaren Formula One team. NASCAR technical inspectors approached the car with heightened scrutiny, aware of Smokey's reputation and suspicious of any vehicle that had performed so dramatically at Bonneville. What followed was one of the most thorough technical inspections in NASCAR history and one of the most controversial disqualifications. The official reason for disqualification was never clearly stated, with NASCAR citing non-conforming body modifications and illegal aerodynamic enhancements. Smokey vehemently protested, arguing that every component on the car could be traced to legitimate Chevrolet part numbers and that all modifications fell within existing regulations. The dispute highlighted a fundamental problem with 1960s racing regulations. Rules were written for conventional modifications, not the sophisticated engineering that Smokey had employed. His acid-dip body panels were lighter than standard, but they were still genuine Chevrolet panels. His relocated suspension points improved handling, but the suspension components themselves were factory pieces. Bruce McLaren, frustrated by the disqualification, publicly supported Smokey's position. McLaren had extensive experience with international racing regulations and believed the Camaro met all technical requirements as written. His endorsement carried significant weight in the racing community, but it couldn't overturn NASCAR's decision. The controversy effectively ended Smokey's direct involvement with the cars. Recognizing that his reputation had made the Camaros too controversial for major race entries, he sold them to Don Yenko, the Pennsylvania Chevrolet dealer, who had already established his own reputation for high-performance Camaros. Under Yenko's ownership, the cars finally achieved the race victories that had eluded them, while Smokey owned them. Yenko's team won multiple Trans Am events and set additional records, proving that the car's performance was genuine rather than the result of illegal modifications. The irony wasn't lost on Smokey. His cars could only win races after someone else owned them. For decades, the cars disappeared from public view. One was reportedly destroyed in a racing accident. Another was sold to a private collector and modified for vintage racing. The third car, the one that had been driven by Mickey Thompson to the fastest Bonneville speeds, passed through several owners before eventually landing in Vic Edelbrock Jr.'s collection. Edelbrock's acquisition of the car in the 1990s finally provided an opportunity for proper historical analysis. As the son of the founder of Edelbrock Equipment and a respected figure in the automotive performance industry, Edelbrock had both the resources and expertise necessary to properly restore and document one of Smokey's masterpieces. The restoration process revealed modifications that had remained hidden for over 30 years. Computer analysis of the body panel showed that virtually every surface had been subtly altered from factory specifications. The acid dipping had removed not just weight, but had also eliminated manufacturing tolerances and irregularities that could create aerodynamic turbulence. Today, the current market value of Smokey's surviving Camaro reflects its historical significance. Similar cars have sold at auction for over $500,000, with experts suggesting that a properly documented Smokey UNICK Bonneville car could bring significantly more. The combination of racing history, engineering innovation, and Smokey's legendary reputation has created a collector market that continues to grow. So what do you think about Smokey's incredible engineering deception? Would you have had the guts to pull off something this audacious back in 1967? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed uncovering this automotive mystery, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking racing stories. Until next time, thanks for watching.